Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, MCPS challenged by an increase in anti-Semitic activity as the first anniversary of the Hamas terrorist attack approaches on October 7th. Did MCPS squander $160 million tax dollars on electric buses? Clean energy mandates at a crossroads, since 80% of clean energy comes from nuclear power. And did the vice president debate move the needle, or was it just meh? Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the secretary of the Maryland Republican Central Committee, Mark Uncapher, and former county council member and CEO of SkillSmart, Mike Knapp. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. A threatening, racially charged and anti-Semitic message sent to the school newspaper at Walt Whitman High School has heightened the concerns at MCPS of further messaging as the first anniversary of the Hamas terrorist attack approaches next week. Mike, MCPS has modified its policies on school-based speech and political activity, but many organizations like the Jewish Community Relations Council is concerned that the policies do not go far enough. Is there something that we have to be concerned about?
I think there's a lot of things we have to be concerned about, but in particular, as we approach this anniversary, I'm pleased that MCPS has been proactive and tried to engage in this. I think the challenge is we live in an amazingly uncivil world right now, and I think people are willing to say and write even more than they've ever been willing to say and write and submit, and I think that that's really problematic. And to try to figure out how to get in front of that, because at one point, there used to be at least some norms that you could kind of manage some bounds and try to structure some things around. And I don't think we have many of those anymore right now, especially as it comes to speech. And anti-Semitism has been with us for way too long. And to try to come up with a policy or a procedure that we're going to think is going to truly be able to address this and fully accommodate all of the things we need to, especially in a country that truly believes in freedom of speech, I think it's going to be really hard. And so I think the fact that they're doing something and trying to stay vigilant is good. And I think it's probably still going to be insufficient.
So Mark, I'm really confounded by the fact that so much of this hate rhetoric comes, in the school system. MCPS spokesman said that, MCPS is committed to fostering a safe, inclusive, and supportive environment for all students. But it seems difficult when so much of the chatter out there comes into the school system itself.
Yes, well, and I put you put your finger on it. I think one of the challenges is the sort of legitimization of a debate over the existence of Israel as the state, and that's where this crossroads between political speech and what is anti-Semitic. If you say you don't believe Israel should exist and you want to see its destruction as a state, as some do, it really veers into an area that is deeply troubled.
But why is the focus on the schools? I mean, I know there are graffiti attacks at synagogues and there are other places, but so much of this is focused at the school level. Is that because the schools are a melting pot for our societies?
No, I think actually I was going to respond to that, which is I think there's a generational issue at play, and in a younger generational, the identity politics associated that has kind of seeped into the way the Middle East is looked at it ends up framing the debate in a way that is frankly foreign to people with as much gray hair as well, not you, Mike, but the Casey and I have.
Well, I have no hair, Mark. Thank you. So, Mike, what are your thoughts?
No, I think, especially in Montgomery County, that because the schools are one of our more visible areas, I think that's part of why you see it there. We don't have a lot of things that everybody kind of pays attention to, and in Montgomery County, MCPS is among them. But I think Mark's onto something too. I think the fact that we have almost every country in the world represented in our school system, I think makes it a very challenging place, because you have perspectives and views that quite honestly, just most places don't have other places, and so I think that creates a very interesting dynamic and a very difficult community to, I would say, police, but certainly even try to make sure that everyone is remaining civil.
So I guess the final question, because October 7th is next Monday, is the school system addressing this ahead of time and in an appropriate manner? It's kind of a yes or no question, I guess. Real quick.
I think they are, and I think even though they are, I think something is still liable to happen, and I don't know that you can anticipate all of the challenges that you're liable to run into with this.
Yeah, Mark, do you agree?
I agree. I think there's a fundamental question that's kind of hard to address.
Well, let's go on to a topic where MCPS has not done such a great job, and that is, the electric psychedelic school bus snafu, as I like to call it. According to the children's nursery rhyme, the wheels on the bus go round and round, but here in Montgomery County, the wheels on the bus have ground to a halt because, according to a new report from the Montgomery County Council Audit Committee, it questioned the procedures and policies that were in place in the school system as it purchased $160 million of electric school buses that have yet to be delivered, and the manufacturer is racking up penalties in every single day. Mark, the situation has become so bad that MCPS was forced to buy 90 diesel power, those dirty diesel powered engines, and those buses when the vendor Highland Electric fleets failed to deliver. So what's going on here?
Well, for me, I get to do a little I told you so. I wrote about this in Red, Maryland 3 years ago in a piece about has MCPS bought actual buses, spent $160 million. The back end is a little convoluted, the corporate history on this, but these were Proterra buses. Proterra at the time was having huge problems. The batteries were failing in multiple cases, and so we really had plenty of information to know that the buses were not going to be able to work as advertised. Proterra's gone bankrupt. There's been a shift around. There's kind of different companies coming in. This is an example of a more aspirational technology. It's just not there yet, and spending $160 million on basically speculation that the buses might work was really a bad idea. It was a bad idea then, and it frankly continues to be.
So, Mike, I was encouraged that the council, did issue this report. I mean, they have little supervision over how MCPS wastes their money. But is there anybody going to be accountable for this waste of taxpayer dollars?
Well, that's always an interesting challenge. Even when I was on the council, there were a number of challenges where we saw contracts that weren't fulfilled, and from the council side, unfortunately, we wouldn't have we have oversight, but we didn't have control, and so you would end up having negotiations back and forth between the county and the contractors or the vendors, and from my perspective, always got to less than what I thought to be fruitful outcomes. And from going back and watching and reading some of the transcript that took place with the county council and MCPS, it sounded to be going down a similar road. The good thing is, I think all that I've seen so far from the new superintendent is that he is engaging. He's really trying to identify those areas to pay attention to and where to put focus. This is something that predated him. Even the report and the study that was done took place early in the summer, just before he was even brought on board. And so I am hopeful that he is going to, once he prioritizes how we're focusing on our students, is really kind of come in and begin to address some of these other issues, because effectively we've been kind of managing in a leaderless capacity for a while. And ultimately, I agree with Mark. I think we're trying to do with the schools, and I think what the county's trying to do, even with its own bus fleet, with electric buses, is still somewhat aspirational. And some of the work I've heard from in other parts of business that I do, that we're trying to do things on a scale that most other communities aren't there, and that the EV fleets it's difficult to do anything on that scale and to manage it. And we're on the front edge of that. And so we're going to have quite a few hiccups if we want to lead that charge.
Well, certainly the MCPS has been under attack for last several years for its lack of transparency and its decision-making process. And this is, a prima facie example of bad decision-making. Command and control doesn't always work in business, and trying to force a solution before to a problem that is in the distant future isn't always attainable. Any last thoughts before we go to break? Mark, good?
I'm good.
Okay. So when we come back from this short break, will going green mean requiring a nuclear halo? And did the vice president debate mean anything to anybody, or just was generally a big waste of time? Stay tuned when we come back from the short break.
Hey world, I have a quick message. It's about safe driving. All right, let's go. Anytime you're driving, have the seatbelt buckled tight. Both hands on the wheel and your phone out of sight. When not in your hand trying to text somebody back. Because if you do, your car might get smacked. The moral of the story, just put your phone down. The people on the road will stay safe and sound. Put your phone down, put your phone down. People on the road will stay safe and sound. Yeah.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right. Because a few hours ago in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign. Not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
And welcome back. We all know that the state of Maryland has set very ambitious goals to achieve future clean energy mandates of zero carbon emissions by the year 2045. The magnitude of such a goal is daunting, since the development of wind and solar energy sources are insufficient to meet the growing needs of our highly connected world. Hydropower seems to have its own negative consequences as well. So few know that 80% of the green energy produced in our state comes from the Calvert Cliff nuclear power plant that was built in 1975. And now even the environmental community is taking a second look at going nuke. And for the first time since 1979, when the movie The China Syndrome, describing a fictional scenario where reactor components melt through their containment structures into the underlying earth, all the way to China. And there was a crisis at the 3 Mile Island nuclear facility in Pennsylvania, resulting in the worst commercial nuclear accident in U.S. history, caused by a partial meltdown of the reactor. We are now looking at nukes for maybe our future energy needs. Mike, it's interesting that Baltimore-based Constellation Energy has proposed restarting that very same 3 Mile Island nuclear plant to power the demands of artificial intelligence, because there's such a high demand for energy now. Is that a wise decision?
I think it is. I mean, I think when we tend to talk about transportation a lot on this show, and oftentimes we end up with the conclusion that, we need to be doing everything to address our transportation issues. It's not roads, it's not transit, it's try to come up with a comprehensive solution. And I think when you look at clean energy and renewable energy, it's a similar approach. And so I think, to your point, solar and wind don't get everything that we need. I think nuclear is already doing a lot in the state. And I think that when you look at the challenges and the demands that we have for infrastructure to support data warehousing, AI, and various other things, and we see what greenhouse gas emissions can do and what the challenge and the energy requirements are, I think looking at nuclear makes a lot of sense. And I think just reading the other day from some of the folks who live adjacent to 3 Mile Island in the local communities, that outside of what was a very visible and a very unfortunately non-transparent challenge that they had to face in 1979 and did poorly, that in the time after that, when it operated for a number of years, it was a great employer, provided great wages, provided strong energy for the community. And so I think when you look at that and we take it with a fresh approach, I think nuclear provides a pretty good option, in addition to the other sources that we're looking at.
Well, Mark, the state of Georgia this past year opened up 2 new large-scale nuclear plants, and they began operating. And is it time to consider the same here in Maryland?
Well, hopefully we can in Maryland do it more economically than it was done in Georgia. The Georgia plants went way over budget by something, up to 35 billion, which is I think close to 3 times what the original estimate was. That no doubt is a function of the fact that we are restarting the construction industry, at least of large reactors. So it may make more sense to sort of get our feet wet, so to speak, with the restart of 3 Mile Island and adjacent facilities from existing nuclear power plant. But this is actually a continuation of the conversation we had about buses, which is that energy decisions need to be grounded in economics, sound economics, and not just aspiration. And the numbers need to pencil out that we can get reliable energy at a cost that we can afford.
Well, I think what's changed the conversation a little bit is the growing demands of artificial intelligence and the realization that we're not meeting our projected energy demands for the future. And so we're now looking at a different alternative. And I'm just, I've always been a proponent of safe, clean nuclear energy. And the technology has developed over the past 40 years, 45 years, to now taking a look at it. I mean, I'd amend the 2050 Montgomery plan to include.
You want to put a nuclear plant up where Dickerson is?
I'd like to. Frankly, I'd like to put it in my backyard.
And actually, that's one of the encouraging technologies. Are not necessarily the large plant that was built in Georgia, but are smaller nuclear plants that can be developed. Now, obviously, we may grow from there, but that is definitely an option worth considering.
And we have some companies here in Montgomery County that are actually leading some of that smaller development and innovation, which is pretty cool. But I think it's exciting. I think it's important, to your point, Casey, that as we are trying to figure out how to address these demands and these needs, that what becomes old is new, and we become somewhat innovative. The other piece is too that some of the challenges of both the China syndrome and what they saw on 3 Mile Island was the technology, but it was also the inability to communicate and be transparent what was happening with that technology as it was happening. And so it made it much more of a crisis. Not that it wasn't one, but when people weren't clear on the information that was being shared, that made that crisis ratchet up even significantly more.
Well, we not only our own 3 Mile Island, but Chernobyl and the Japanese nuclear disaster that happened. So, I mean, safeguards have to be in place, and redundancy of safeguards have to be in place in order to make this viable. But the encouraging thing is that you can, as Mark just described, go lower scale and find, and reap the benefits from a lower scale project as opposed to the large scale projects. We're going to go on to our last topic. We're a political show, and we got to talk politics at some point. But, I struggle trying to find, interesting topics for the audience each week. I don't care about the guests because, they know everything. But, this is, a struggle sometimes. Now, John Nance Garner, who served as vice president to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, is credited with saying that the job of the vice president wasn't worth a warm bucket of spit. There is some debate as to whether he said spit or something else. But yet this past Tuesday, millions of viewers watched the televised debate between vice presidential candidate Governor Tim Walz and Senator J.D. Vance. Mark, if the job is so unimportant as Texas Jack Nance described it, why bother? Did we learn anything?
Ask Harry Truman that, who was vice president for, I think, all of 84 days before he became president. No, I think I would turn this over to Mike, but I think we all can agree that knuckleheads shouldn't apply for the job.
Well, and at that point, it's not important until it is, right? It doesn't count till it does. And so I think it's important for people to at least have some understanding of who that person is that may be next in line. They may never do anything, or they could be leading the world, for 3.5 years.
Well, I am a bit of a curmudgeon here on this topic, but was there anything learned about the two candidates at the last debate that we had the other night? Do you have a fuller picture of who they are?
I think we have a fuller picture. I think we really have learned that it pays to do interviews and to be engaged. This in the parliamentary system, you've got prime minister's question. It's an important part of the process to have the back and forth that goes on, or the questioning, what have you. Tim Walz probably would have done a lot better had he done a lot more interviews and had been more engaged with the back and forth that takes place in answering questions.
Well, he should appear on this show. We'd grill him.
There you go.
Well.
Right.
I think we learned a lot. I mean, I think actually, I thought it was a reasonable debate. I think they both actually presented themselves pretty well. Obviously, we talked about Senator Vance as being pretty slick. He tried to distance himself from other things he said publicly, and he worked really hard at doing that. I think Governor Walz was not to Mark's point, certainly took him a little while to get his sea legs, but I think his content was good. I think he clearly understood issues and understands issues and could explain them reasonably well. And honestly, up until where we were in the summer, you had two octogenarian candidates, and I think it's really important, if that's in fact the case, we only have one now, to understand who that next person might be, because it's not crazy to think that if that octogenarian at the top of the ticket doesn't make it, that we're going to see that next person. So, I think it's worth it for us to have that dialogue and have that discourse and understand who the next people are.
Well, look, I fully support both of your sentiments that the job of the presidency is important, and the job of the potential successor as from the vice president is important as well. And I gained, a feeling of comfort. I thought candidate Vance did well. I actually thought candidate Walz did well as well. He's been governor and chief executive of a very important state, and so it's not that we have someone inexperienced to succeed if either of the two presidential candidates have to be replaced once they're in office.
One of the things I thought was interesting was the fact that they both clearly took pains to not get into the mud. I mean, they really worked hard to not denigrate each other and to stay kind of on message and on topic. And I thought that was a really interesting tactic on both parts, which I actually kind of appreciated. We haven't seen a lot of that lately, and I thought that part was actually not a bad thing for the country to witness.
Well, I will say that I thought that Vice President Pence was a very moderate man and did not engage in that as the hyperbole as well. So it would be nice to go back to a more rational time period, wouldn't it? But I don't know when that will be.
Some rational.
When we come back, we're coming up with parting shots. Stay tuned.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all, if I could go back, I would. But I can't.
When I first saw Turtle, my heart was full. Now anything but lonely.
We had this deep connection, this heart connection.
He just wants to be close to you and part of your life.
Every day with Turtle is a perfect day.
When I'm holding her, it makes me feel calmer.
I think everything he does shows how much he loves us.
When we adopt a shelter pet,
we discover
they're a little bit of a lot of things,
but they're all pure love.
Welcome back. Now with parting shots, Mike Knapp.
Thanks, Casey. I've got two. The first one is, and this happened about a week and a half ago, and so I'm a little late to the party. I just haven't been on the show since then. We had a ribbon cutting for the Catherine and Isaiah Leggett Math and Science Building at the Tacoma Park campus of Montgomery College. And I just wanted to acknowledge that because it was a great recognition of the contribution of the legates to the community. And it was also a great representation of the college and the community working together to create a wonderful facility for students to learn for the future in STEM disciplines because of its proximity to the neighborhood. It really required a lot of coordination between the college and the community to make it work. And it was great to see everybody participating in that event and just to see everybody who turned out for the legates and turned out for the college and the community. My second one is, and I will fully disclose this, I am a member of the Healthcare Initiative Foundation, which is a little-known board philanthropic organization in the county that has the ability to provide about $2 million a year to philanthropic activities and health-related activities in the county. And we celebrate our 50th anniversary this past year. And in that time, we've given away about $90 million to activities in the county. And it's just a neat little thing. And it's a great program to be able to help spur on innovation in healthcare.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Mark Uncapher, for your part in chat.
Well, this show comes in the middle of the Jewish high holidays. And in fact, the show will first air on the 7th on Sunday. I think our hearts are with the victims of the terrorist attack last year. And I think we all wish our Jewish friends a good high holiday.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Mike, and thank you for appearing this week, and thank you to the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest-hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.